Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. The Computer Primary Component Series will go in depth of the individual components that make up the computer. This video, Part 3, Motherboards and Motherboard Components, will discuss the motherboard form factors and key motherboard components including chipset and the BIOS. It also includes discussion on TPM and HSM. The motherboard is also referred to as the main board or the system board. It is the primary printed circuit board located within the PC. The processor is plugged into the motherboard, which has allowed the processor to talk to the other components in the computer. You can consider the motherboard as the nervous system of the computer. The motherboard also contains the processor slot or socket, clock generator, a BIOS chip, a CMOS battery, RAM chips, expansion slots, and various ports including USB and video ports, drive connectors, and power connectors. Here is an MSI motherboard. You can see the processor, PCI and PCI Express slots, RAM slots, and heatsink for the chipset. In the bottom corner, you see USB ports and a SATA drive connectors. Near the top corner is a 24-pin ATX power connector. Here's an ASUS motherboard with CPU socket, RAM slots, PCI Express slots, the CMOS battery, and the heatsink for the chipset. This motherboard includes the M2 SSD drive socket and needs the standard 24-pin ATX power connector and an auxiliary 6-pin power connector. A printed circuit board simplifies the inside of a computer. It has thin metal traces embedded, which replaces having thousands of wires inside the computer. In addition, it is cheaper to produce a circuit board than to solder hundreds of wires in a system together. It should also be mentioned that wires are fragile compared to a motherboard and would be impossible to troubleshoot. Today, if wire traces go bad on the motherboard, it is cheaper and simpler to replace the entire motherboard. In fact, the motherboard is considered a field replaceable unit or FRU. Form factors are used for motherboards, cases, and power supplies. A form factor describes the physical dimensions, sizes, and layouts. It may also specify power connectors and airflow. When installing a motherboard into a case, you must make sure that the case supports the motherboard form factor. In addition, the power supply has to provide enough power to the motherboard and associated peripherals. The two most common form factor families for motherboards is ATX and ITX. ATX is short for Advanced Technology Extended. It is larger than the ITX family of form factors. The standard or full-size ATX is used in most towers and has the dimensions of 12 inches by 9.6 inches or 30.5 centimeters by 24.4 centimeters. It includes at least 4 DIMMs and 7 expansion slots. The ATX standard also supports a 24-pin power connector with a 6 or 8-pin supplemental power connector. The smaller version of ATX is the micro-ATX, which runs at 9.6 inches by 9.6 inches or 24 centimeters by 24 centimeters. It supports 2 to 4 DIMMs and up to 4 expansion slots. The popular smaller version motherboard is ITX, which comes in Mini-ITX, Nano-ITX, and Pico-ITX. The Mini-ITX motherboard is 6.7 inches by 6.7 inches or 17 centimeters by 17 centimeters, while the Pico-ITX is the smallest at a 3.9 inches by 2.8 inches or 10 centimeters by 7.1 centimeters. It supports no more than 2 DIMMs and is screwed compatibility with ATX, allowing the system to fit into most enclosures. Large manufacturers such as Dell or HP often use their own proprietary form factor. A chipset consists of chips and other components on the motherboard that allow different PC components, including the processor, to communicate with each other. For this reason, it's known as the data flow management system. It consists of the bus controller, peripheral controllers, memory controller, clocks, and timers. Today, the chipset, which includes the ROM chips and BIOS, usually require heatsink to help keep the chips from overheating. If the chipset drivers are not included in the operating system, you'll have to download and install the chipset drivers from Optimum Performance and to see all of the devices included in the chipset. Read-only memory, or ROM chips, contains instructions and data. Unlike the contents of RAM, the contents of ROM are permanent. When there is no power, it will still remember its own content. Firmware is the ROM chips with program instructions and data. Every PC has multiple ROM chips. On the motherboards, you'll find that the system BIOS. The video ROM BIOS located on the video card or on the motherboard if the video card is built into the motherboard. Other expansion cards may include ROM chips. BIOS is short for Basic Input-Output System. It can be thought of the instincts of the computer since it has basic instructions on how to control the many hardware devices, including accessing the boot disk, and it controls the boot process. Today, the system BIOS is part of the system chipset. The BIOS setup program is a program that you configure the hardware of your system, including which drives to boot from or to boot from the network. You can also enable and disable features in devices that are included with the motherboard. The older BIOS is called BIOS or Legacy BIOS, while the newer BIOS is UEFI BIOS. The Legacy BIOS was originally released in 1981, whereas older operating systems talk to hardware through the BIOS instead of accessing hardware directly. The system initialization information was stored on a dedicated chip on the motherboard, which needed a small CMOS battery to keep it powered so they would not forget its content. It had limited hardware support and only supported drives up to 2.2 terabytes. It did not have drivers for modern networks, video, and storage devices. As the BIOS limitations were becoming obvious, a replacement was needed, which was the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI. It supports network capabilities, and the BIOS setup program was upgraded that could be a graphical or text-based environment that was supported with a mouse. Instead of storing the configuration in memory on the motherboard, it stored the information in an EFI file, which is kept on the disk. It supports up to 9 zettabytes, and it supports the GUID partition table, or GPT, which supports drives larger than 2 terabytes, up to 18 exabyte drives, and up to 128 partitions. It also supported the PCI Express devices and made a disk more resilient by offering a redundant disk layout structure. It also added secure features including Secure Boot, which prevents from booting unauthorized or unsigned applications and drives. This helps prevent rootkits. Your motherboard includes a CMOS memory and battery, which is used to store some hardware configuration information. The battery is used to power this memory when the computer is turned off or not plugged into power. While the CMOS memory is not used as much as it used to be, the battery will keep the clock running so date and time is current, which is important to maintain security. If your system loses date and time, your battery may be failing. You can measure the voltage of the battery with a multimeter or replace the battery. The CMOS battery can last several years. To remove the battery, press the latch to release the battery. To install the battery, place the battery into position and click into place. A Trusted Platform Module, or TPM, is a specialized chip on a laptop or desktop computer motherboard or in its processor that is designed to secure hardware and integrated cryptographic keys. Today, usually is part of the chipset. If the system doesn't include it, it's not feasible to add one without replacing the motherboard. TPM uses cryptography to help securely store essential and critical information on PCs to enable platform authentication. They store a variety of sensitive information, including user credentials, passwords, fingerprints, certificates, and encryption keys. Most PCs shipped since 2017 are capable of running Trusted Platform Module version 2.0, which most likely needs to be enabled in the BIOS setup program. TPM 2.0 is required to run Windows 11. It is used in Windows 11 for a number of features, including Windows Hello for identity protection and BitLocker for data protection. For example, consider when you turn on a laptop computer, the TPM authenticates the drive by providing a cryptographic key to unlock the encrypted drive. And if the key is validated, the computer will boot up as normal. If the cryptographic key is tampered with, the computer won't start. If you try to move the drive to another computer, the TPM chip on the second computer won't have the encryption key to unlock the drive. To see if you have a TPM chip enabled in Windows, you could open Settings, then open Updates and Security, click Windows Security, and click Device Security. If it says Security Processor, you have the TPM. If it does not, it may be disabled in the BIOS setup program. Another way is to open the TPM.MSC console. If it says Compatible TPM cannot be found, the TPM may be disabled. This console shown on the screen has TPM enabled. If you have a system that does not have TPM and you still need a security device that can add to a system to manage, generate, and securely store cryptographic keys, you can add a Hardware Security Module or HSM. While smaller HSMs come as expansion cards that you can install on a server or connect to a computer port, high-performance HSMs are external devices connected to a network using TCP/IP. Different from TPM, HSMs are removable or external devices. HSMs are usually used for high-end mission-critical servers, including SSLs, accelerators, high-availability clusters, and certificate authorities, whereas the server is processing a lot of encryption activities. Question: what should you consider when selecting a motherboard to be installed into a case? Answer: the form factor. The form factor will specify the shape and size of the motherboard. Question: what describes the physical dimensions, sizes, and layouts used in motherboards, cases, and power supplies? Answer: form factor. Question: which of the following is the largest motherboard form factor? Answer: ATX. Question: which of the following is smaller than the micro-ATX? Answer: Pico-ATX, Mini-ITX, Nano-ITX, and Pico-ITX. Question: what allows the processor to communicate with all of the other components on or connected to the motherboard? Answer: chipset. Question: what provides the power on self-test or post? Answer: basic input output system or BIOS. Question: you have a new laptop computer and you need to encrypt the laptop hard drive without purchasing any additional hardware, what would you use? Answer: TPM. For more information, visit these sites displayed on the screen. In summary, the motherboard, also referred to as the main board or the system board, is the primary printed circuit board located within the PC. The processor is plugged into the motherboard, which has allowed the processor to talk to the other components in the computer. The motherboard also contains a processor slot or socket, clock generator, a BIOS chip, a CMOS battery, ROM slots, expansion slots, various ports including USB and video ports, drive connectors, and power connectors. A form factor describes a physical dimension, sizes, and layout. The most common motherboard form factors is Advanced Technology Extended, or ATX, and Information Technology Extended, or ITX. A chipset consists of chips and other components on the motherboard that allow different PC components, including the processor, to communicate with each other. Today, the chipset includes the ROM chips and BIOS, which is soldered into the motherboard and usually requires a heatsink to help keep the chips from overheating. BIOS is short for Basic Input-Output System. It can be thought of the instincts of the computer since it has basic instructions on how to control the many hardware devices. The BIOS setup program is a program that you can configure the hardware of your system, including which drive to boot from or to boot from the network. Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UEFI, designs to replace the legacy BIOS. Trusted Platform Module, or TPM, is used with enhancing computer security and privacy by protecting data through encryption and decryption. Hardware Security Module, or HSM, is a security device that you can add to a system to manage, generate, and securely store cryptographic keys. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Computer Primary Components, Part 4, Motherboard Installation and Troubleshooting. If you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.